The reality we exist in today is a single layer of creation. What we see is simply enough what it is. Yet in the past, before this, in the time of the angels of creation, a single thing was many things. A flower was not simply a flower, it was also a mischievous spirit, a memory, a song on the wind, and much more. The Elohim were at the same time the forces of the universe that controlled it, the processes of matter and energy, while also the anthropomorphic beings who breathed life into a cold and dead universe, quite literally. And Adam and Eve were at the same time both simply two humans, but also tribes and the end products of a long history of evolution from a common ancestor with the apes. Now you have an inkling of an understanding of the horrors the fallen experience as they see how this world has fallen. What was once grand and majestic beyond comprehension is now mundane and dull, a shadow of its former self. When the fallen decided to help the humans along by actively interfering with them, against the great architect's wishes, they did so because they could no longer stand seeing them squander their potential. Humanity was perpetually stuck in a state of incomprehension. They could not grasp higher thought. They could not appreciate the transience of beauty. What spurred these angels into action was a visage of disaster by Arimal, an angel of the spheres. A debate was held, where the conclusion was drawn that this disaster would happen because of humanity's inability to live up to its true potential. The angels, blind to their own roles, assumed that this one stain upon the Great Maker's work was what would cause the end of things. The Elohim had approached their creator about this, of course. They had implored them to lay a hand on the humans and help them fulfill their purpose, but they had been denied, or told that they needed to see things as their creator saw things. A few of the angels took this offer up, but was never heard from again, simply missing from creation, neither dead nor alive. Thus the angels, frustrated by their creator's lack of desire to see their greatest creation prosper, intimidated by the idea of trying to see things from their creator's perspective, and likewise emboldened by their own role in making the universe what it was, decided to intervene. Arimal, Uziel, Lila, and Belial. Those were the angels who discussed what to do. But it was with the arrival of Lucifer, the morning star, that their words were brought to action. Lucifer too did not know what the future would pertain, but instead chose to act on his highest command, to love humanity above all else. Belial and Arimal sided with the morning star. Lila and Uziel did not. At the end of this meeting, these two groups went their separate ways, with Lila and Uziel ascending to the heavens to inform their peers of what the morning star had planned, while Lucifer brought those who wished to reveal themselves to humanity, and thus in turn educate them to the true potential, down to the earth. The first of the Elohim to show herself to humanity was the Archangel Marisel of the fifth house. She showed them what had died to feed them. Next was Griphiel, who taught them that they were chosen and protected from the claws of wild animals by him and his kind, who kept the beasts at bay. Senevel of the House of the Deep told them how each drink of water was a kiss from the Elohim who dearly loved them. Gar Asok, the pole star's virtue, blessed them future and past because of his love for them. Consciousness was their gift to humanity, and with it would eventually come understanding of good and evil, of language and of metaphors and of abstract thought, the simplest of human understandings, yet some of the most fundamental skills that differentiate us from animals. The ability to lie, to create, to imagine, to do evil. It all stems from consciousness, from awareness of abstract things and concepts, of knowledges of the consequences of one's actions. Mankind flourished like never before under the guidance of angels, creating language, art, tools, architecture, and so much more. Yet heaven would not stand by idly, and as dawn came once more upon the humans and their new teachers, the the Archangel Michael approached with a host of heaven behind him. Michael, who had once been a cherub. Michael, who had supplanted Lucifer as the highest of the host. Michael demanded that all traitors to heaven, a full third of the angelic host, return so that they may be undone, removed from the equation. Those humans who willingly agreed to repent will be brought with the Archangel, the knowledge taught to them by the Elohim removed from their minds. Michael and Lucifer confronted each other, but so alien to them was the concept of actually hurting each other that once it became clear that Lucifer would be the winner, Michael withdrew, but not before he repeated his demands. 2 out of the 33,300,033 traitors allowed themselves to be returned to heaven, the remaining staying behind, and 1 of Adam and Eve's children professed to follow the heavenly host. All others remained loyal to Lucifer and his followers, which emboldened the fallen in their endeavor. Then the Creator threw the world into disarray. It was the beginning of the Age of Wrath. Paradise was destroyed, the world was in ruins, and the angels who had stood by Lucifer were barred from returning to heaven. They were bound to earth, now and forever, and their fates tied closely with that of humanity. The angels would form around Lucifer and his lieutenants, his archdukes. Largest of these legions was the Crimson Legion, who believed in the vision of raising humanity as their new charges, and to help them freely. They were led by Belial, first of Lucifer's archdukes, and were composed mainly of the Namaru and Anunnaki, the devils and malefactors. The Ebon Legion were the warriors of Abaddon who saw the coming conflict and decided to prepare for it. Unlike Lucifer and Belial, who sought to motivate the Crimson Legion with love, Abaddon instead declared that humanity, creatures so much lesser than them, owed them a boon that could never be repaid. It was their fault, Abaddon argued, that the angels had been cast out of heaven, and thus they would serve the angels and become instruments in the crusades against those loyal to the great architect. The Devourers and the Scourges flocked to this legion. Dagon of the Malefactors swore instead to dedicate himself to upholding the honor of Lucifer and to never punish humanity for the deeds of the angels. He formed the Iron Legion, who were responsible for the defense of humanity and the angels in the upcoming war. Many malefactors, and even some devourers, sided with him, appalled by the wrath of Abaddon. The Silver Legion was founded by wise fiend Asmodeus, navigator of the stars, who were tasked by Lucifer to understand the secrets of creation and to unlock the potential of humanity. Asmodeus swore not just to exploit the potential according to the Creator's plan, but to even transcend it, to search for the darkness that birthed the light. Most fiends, and some defilers, sided with Asmodeus in this task, and they would come to work closely with the children of Adam and Eve. The Halaku, the Slayers, had yet to choose a legion, and thus they formed the Alabaster Legion under Archduke Azrael, a slayer like themselves. They would form their reserves, and would help build up humanity and the defenses of the fallen wherever they were needed. They would stand by to help the other legions. After this, Lucifer declared that no longer would title and authority be based on what purpose they were created for. Instead, competence and skill would rule, and the possibility to climb or sink in rank would rule. For the first time then, the Elohim became aware of each other not simply as peers, but as rivals, as rulers, and as servants. As for those mortals who turned from the rebels, who went back to ignorance, a debate was held, and finally Lucifer decreed that they would be left alone, but that the legions would sow seeds that hopefully would convince them of the righteousness of his followers. Having done this, the legions then took their human charges far and wide across the world, building mighty fortresses, manses, and cathedrals. Humanity began to worship the traitorous Elohim at this point, And as time went by, these angels began to experiment with the extent of their powers with the world around them. Great cities were hewn from mountains, and massive monuments were erected to themselves as the angels began to realize that their powers now stemmed from the faith of the humans they now lived alongside. Grandest of these constructions was the cathedral city of Gen Hinnom in the Valley of Tears, where Lucifer made his base. Gen Hinnom was a massive black cathedral, and even in its infancy it was a grand construction, one which memory is so ingrained into humanity that you can see its pale shadows throughout human history. Gen Hinnom was constructed on the same spot where Lucifer shed a tear as mankind stood up against Michael, and it would remain the heart of the rebellion for the entire duration of the coming war against the host of heaven. It was not merely a fortress, but a center of faith, and a city, and a symbol of Lucifer's rebellion. Indeed, some say it had existed even before the fall, and that it was merely claimed by Lucifer after that. It was a symbol of perfection, despite what would come to transpire. A fallen of the Iron Legion described it as such. Approaching Gen Hinnom, one would only see the walls and the spires reaching up from the ground and touching the clouds, clawing at heaven and making the sky weep with rain. To us, it existed in layers, each more perfect than the rest, 9 in total. The 2 lowest of these existed in shadow, where one would find the path to the forges of the Iron Legion. The mortal flocks of Gen Hinnom existed in the 3rd to 6th layer, building monuments to us and great cathedrals to house their own numbers. The 7th and 8th layers belonged to us. Here we made our homes, some modest, others ostentatious. The Palace of Shadows dominated the last circle, the citadel and fortress of the Morning Star. Beyond the Black Cathedral, the outskirts were dotted with mortal encampments in villages where the lowest among our numbers would minister to the pilgrims and faithful who would come to pay homage to us. The paths these pilgrims took soon became the 4 roads that snaked their way to every settlement, cathedral, and bastion of the fallen. The host likewise built their own cities, 5 of them: Sagan, Shamayin, Makonon, Zabul, and Araboth. But where the fallen built their cities together with humanity, and to inspire faith and worship, these cities were instead almost prison-like for those humans who had chosen to return to ignorance. Only one of these cities ever stood eternally against Lucifer's host. Makonon, stronghold of Michael, the Archangel of Heaven and Lord of the Host, stood defiant until the end of the war to come. And for hundreds of years following the creation of Lucifer's legions, the fallen and the host of heaven would come to clash occasionally in what would become known as the Silent War. Yet never did it lead to the death of either parties. These clashes were metaphysical, and like with Lucifer and Michael, it was based on calculations and probability and mathematics and physics. But this was not to last, as the upcoming times would see the angels of heaven and of earth learning how to shed blood of both humans and angels. The 3 grandchildren of Cain wait patiently for the time of judgment to arise. Bambi Parsons, a leader with an unbreakable will, Procyon, who has shed his weaknesses and has been reborn as a god amongst Cain's angels, and Dugal, whose thirst for blood is matched only by his strength of will and purpose. Their child, the Methuselah, control our every move through their timeless jihad. They are Her Satanic Majesty Dani, whose mere presence chills the heart, Maximilian S. Hardcastle, a tutor and master of the jihad, Socrates Johnson, a masterful craftsman of stories, Lauren Eason, a trustworthy ally and friend, Alexander Canehurst, inquisitive explorer and steward of the Canehursts, and Snow, who oversees the progress of the council patiently from the shadows. On the council of the Primogen are seated Edward Reed, 06, Ian Nichols, the Black Friar, Ravenfang, Brandon Hunter Hayden, the Autumn Alchemist, and Michelle Light, wise leaders and of good judgment. This week, the Council would wish to welcome the Elder Dogma to our Council. We deeply appreciate your wisdom and support of our endeavors. We would also wish to thank the Ancile Envihan, who has remained a staunch supporter through times of peace and times of trouble. Naturally, all our elders, Ancile, and neonates receive our gratitude from the bottoms of our hearts. Without your support, this would not be possible. And thank you for watching. And I looked, and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him.